Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about how scientists are translating a plant's final moments into computer code. And believe me, this isn't just some lab experiment. This digital plant could fundamentally change how we feed the world.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll get into the biology of a plant's final chapter. Then, we'll see how you actually build a digital model of that. After that, we'll put it to the test and really unpack how this code could help us grow food. And finally, we'll ask the big question, what's next?
Okay, first up, let's dive into the biology. You might think a plant's final days are all about just, well, dying. But it turns out there's a real strategy behind it.
You know when you see a leaf turn yellow, we all just think, yep, it's decaying. But for many plants, especially the annuals we rely on for food, this isn't some random breakdown. Aging is actually a highly programmed tactical shutdown. It's a critical part of its entire life strategy.
So this whole process has a fancy scientific name, senescence. But honestly, just think of it as the plant's final brilliant move. Before a leaf is done for, the plant goes into the systematic process of breaking down its own cells to pull back valuable nutrients, we're talking nitrogen, potassium, and sends them to newer leaves or to its seeds. It's basically running its own internal recycling program.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. If we can really understand all the triggers and rules of senescence, we can build a computer model of it. By turning this whole biological dance into a simulation, scientists can create a digital twin of a plant. And with that, they can predict its behavior and manage its health with incredible precision.
Okay, so how on earth do you even start to build a digital plant? Well, let's pop the hood and look at the three core components that make this whole simulation work: the triggers, the stages, and the rules.
First off, the model has to understand what actually kicks off this aging process. And just like in real life, it's not just one thing. The simulation has to account for everything, from just its natural lifespan to all sorts of environmental curveballs, like a sudden drought, a heat wave, a lack of nutrients, or even something as simple as being shaded out by other leaves.
Next up, the model is smart. It knows aging isn't just an on-off switch. It lays out this super clear 5-step journey. A plant might slip into early senescence, but hey, if conditions get better, it can actually bounce back. But once it hits those active and late stages, that's the point of no return. The process is irreversible, and it's headed towards complete tissue death.
And finally, the third piece of the puzzle, the rules. These are basically the dials and settings a scientist gets to play with. For instance, the code can say that water stress really kicks in when availability drops below 40%, or it can set a very specific rate for how much extreme heat speeds up aging. It's these parameters that make the simulation so powerful and so realistic.
All right, we've got our digital plant built. So what's next? We stress it out. We can run these virtual experiments, throwing all kinds of crazy conditions at our simulated plant just to see how it holds up.
So check this out. On the left, everything's perfect, ideal conditions. Our digital plant is just cruising along, aging at a really slow baseline rate. But then, look at the right. We simulate a heat wave, and boom, the model just kicks into overdrive. The total senescence rate quadruples as the plant hits the panic button and speeds up its aging to cope.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because we can actually put numbers on that damage. Just look at the difference. Not having enough nitrogen more than doubles the aging rate. But in this simulation, intense heat is the real killer. It causes the fastest decline by far. For a farmer, knowing that difference isn't just interesting, it's invaluable.
Okay, this is all really cool tech. I get it. But so what? Why does simulating a dying plant matter for, feeding people? Well, the answer goes right back to that clever recycling trick we talked about earlier. See, the model isn't just about simulating death. That's the boring part. It's about simulating how the plant intelligently moves its resources around, from old, dying leaves to the new, productive parts of the plant, like its fruit or younger growth. This whole process is called nutrient remobilisation, and it's the secret to how efficient a plant can be. And wow, just look at how good the plant is at this. It's an incredible recycling machine. The model shows it can claw back up to 80% of its potassium and 70% of its nitrogen from those old leaves. Meanwhile, other things, like calcium, are pretty much stuck in place.
But let's zero in on that nitrogen number for a second. 70%. For anyone in farming, that number is a total game changer. It means the plant can essentially fertilize itself, which reduces the need for expensive and often environmentally damaging fertilizers we have to add.
So when you put it all together, the real-world applications are just massive.
With code like this, farmers can perfect their harvest timing, cut way back on fertilizer waste, and even predict crop loss before they can even see it with their own eyes. This helps us breed stronger plants and makes things like vertical farming way more efficient.
You know, this ability to predict and even manage a plant's entire life cycle, it's incredible, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg. So, for our last section, let's zoom out and think about the big picture here.
Think about what we just saw. We modeled one single biological process, aging, and it suddenly has this huge ripple effect on a global problem like food security. And that is the real power of digital biology, breaking down these immense complex systems into code that we can actually manage and predict.
So we started this whole explainer by decoding a plant's final chapter. But as this tech gets better and better, you have to wonder, maybe this is actually the first chapter in a whole new story of digital biology. The only real question is, what are we going to simulate next?